Welcome, Dr. Jason Dean, back on Monday, October 21st, 2024. Time just flies. It does.
It does.
It's Monday, so Morley's here. How are you, sir?
I'm doing just fine.
How's your week going?
Well, it just started, right?
I'm sorry.
No,
How was your week last week? I always say that on Monday, and it's the start of a week.
it was actually pretty productive. I'm um, writing a second edition of the Cure book, and we got to get everything done in the next 10 days. It's just like this crunch time of getting all the edits and the footnotes, and it's just, it's very stimulating. Let's just leave it at that.
Here's a weird question.
Yes.
How much do you feel like it has evolved, grown, and changed from your first time, your first edition? Like has it been a radical move forward?
Well, it's a wonderful question, and it implies that the second edition will be this encyclopedia of information. It's not going to do. We're not going to do that. We're only going to have a couple new chapters. One new chapter is going to be on women's health, which I think is going to be
Oh, good.
a very important addition to the mix. Um, the the goal is not to come up with more ways to prove that copper is essential. It's to get more people to realize that this is the missing link. And we're going to have a publisher who it's Ben Bella Books, and their niche in the publishing industry is to popularize um, kind of countercultural ideas
Okay.
and make them popular. Take really uncomfortable ideas and get people to be more aware of it. And so the CEO came up through the marketing ranks. He didn't come up through the editing ranks.
Right.
And so he said, I think we can really make a big dent to get more people to be aware of this. I said, let's go for it. So it's going to be, in some respects, there'll be new information, but it's not going to be like, oh my gosh, it's just, this is a repository of
Has,
that maybe that's the third edition, but the second edition is just to tighten the message and really expand the awareness of the information.
has it been challenging to decide what's going in and what's staying out?
Yeah, it's really hard.
I, I,
'Cause
I um I've heard of publishers before, or authors say they talk to publishers and they put this out and they're always like, oh, we had to get it from this down to this down to this, and I'm like, that sounds like one, very very frustrating and hard, but two, man, like, how do you take out important part? You know what I mean? Like, that sounds very trying.
No, it really is. It's like we're Meryl Streep in Sophie's Choice.
You
Like,
feel like if it's in your head and you wrote it down, it's important, right?
right. And if it was good enough for the first edition, why isn't it good enough for the second edition? And I think for the most part, Larry Trivieri, who's the guest writer, amazing writer, really gifted, he's been very true to preserving the integrity of the first edition,
Good.
and trying to bring in some new ideas and new information. And it's just, I've sent him tons and tons of stuff, and he said, no, we're not going to be able to do that. And that's hard.
That's where I would probably get frustrated.
Well, yeah, no, and maybe that's where this is coming from, right? So I think it's just you have to surrender. You just have to give in and say, okay, it's for the greater good. And does everyone need to know that the GSK P3 gene? Do they need to know that that's copper dependent and that
Absolutely,
has to
Morley. Absolutely.
and that's the origin of diabetes right there?
Yeah.
It's like a friend of ours, Martha Carlin. You really need to have a podcast with her. She's a wealth of information.
Be happy to.
Yeah, I focus on the mitochondria. She focuses on the microbiome,
Oh,
and she's
good one.
a genius. Yeah, she's really good. And so we have these Jane Curtin, Dan Aykroyd debates about what's more important. And she's very good natured about it. But she found a document today that I sent you. I'm not begging you to call her up, because
I'm actually playing with my phone right now, not to ignore you, but to actually make sure I have all these uploaded so I can show them. So
That's all right. But this is it's a gene card of all the pathways that relate to copper homeostasis. Well, I've been looking for something like this for years, and she just stumbled into it. She's flying back from California, and she found this mother lode, and I'm like, OMG, it's just incredible what the connections are to all these different genes tying
Nice.
back to copper. It's absolutely unreal. And so this, anytime people uh, ask me about copper toxicity, I just kind of laugh inside and like, you don't really understand the problem because it's so vast, but it's all below the water. People don't know about what's really going on inside their body. And not trying to sound like I'm some know-it-all. It's just you read a lot of articles, you learn a lot,
Sure.
and and most people are skimming the surface, just trying to learn a lot
Yes.
about oh what's new, and they're just so excited to learn this and this and this and this and this, and I'm like, I'm drilling deep, 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 and the deeper I go, the more fascinating it becomes. It's absolutely amazing.
100%. This is actually, I think I can bring this up. Let me see if this will work. How about that?
Oh, is that that's the
There
gene?
it is. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
would, so you scroll down and there's,
I mean, it gets really deep really fast.
whoa. That's pretty cool though.
Yeah, no,
I'm not going to lie. That's pretty,
yeah, it's pretty impressive. And
so
the significance of this, for those who are curious about it, is what they've done is they've connected all these dots with different genes that all have a connection back to copper, and it's enormous. It's I don't even know what the parallel would be, but it's like suddenly we have a very robust depiction and listing of all these
that's
different
several
genes.
lifetimes of knowledge right there just studying that.
Well, yeah, no, that's a fair statement. There's a lot of information there, a tremendous amount of information
Jeez.
there. And the thing is, people don't understand. If you've heard of a fire brigade, you know, like back in the Wild West, if there was a fire, people would line up and they'd be passing a bucket to get the water to the wherever the fire was. Well, that's the way copper gets into our cells and into the mitochondria. There's literally a little brigade of chaperones that move that um, metal, that mineral, to where it's supposed to be. And and yet we live in this world where we're copper toxic. Well, it's like, okay, well, where in the fire brigade did it break down? And what was it? What was the iron driven mechanism that caused the breakdown?
Sure.
Because it's always going to be iron and oxygen mixing. And the amazing thing is that, and I didn't really appreciate this. There's an iron doorway in every cell called ferroportin, and literally iron doorway, ferroportin. Well, it turns out there's a ferroportin doorway in the mitochondria. I didn't know.
This is never ending on here. Do you realize this?
I know it goes on. It's like 9 pages of
Yeah,
information.
I mean, it's, and I say that in not in a negative way. Just like
No,
this is like
no.
Nerdville right here. Like you could literally spend many careers and lifetimes studying this.
Well, yeah. Well, one just to list it, but then to
Right.
begin to see what the connections are and see what the interconnections are, and see why there would be a breakdown. But people don't realize that if iron can't get out of the mitochondria, you start to lose energy in that mitochondria.
Right.
And it really begins to have a profound effect on the efficiency of burning the fuel, whether it's glucose or fat. My personal opinion is I think the mitochondria were designed to burn fat, and they've been turned into sugar
Sure.
factories. And so, would you put gas in your car? No, no one in their right mind would do that. But that's what we're doing with our mitochondria all the time, and
Um,
and we're all guilty of it.
can I play devil's advocate for a second.
Yeah, I love it.
Can I throw you a completely insane thought?
I've been waiting for years.
As I figured.
Where have you been?
So I'm not going to promote this, but I'm going to just ask the question and see what you think.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring this card up a second, and I'm going to tell you the first thing I thought. This is, so this one bounced off of this. So all I did was I touched, I clicked on spleen angiosarcoma, right?
Yeah.
And there's 5 genes here, correct?
Right. Right.
So then it brings up this spleen angiosarcoma, right? I scroll down and I see RNA gene, microRNA 362. I see microRNA 452. I don't like pharma, but is there a case to be made from their viewpoint that this might be one of the reasons they had designed mRNA shots for the future, because they believe they can turn genetics off? Like, let's say you have a spleen angiosarcoma, right? Now,
Right.
you and I should say, are studying the fact that copper could be essential mineral in these areas, in these genes.
Right.
They aren't looking at that. They're looking at a pharma solution. But is that possibly the future of medicine? What they're looking at is, if we can get this RNA in there, this could turn that angiosarcoma off. Does that make sense to what I'm asking?
No, it's an absolutely fair question. And again, having never worked in big pharma, I don't really know how they think. I don't know
Right.
what their order of magnitude of curiosity is, although I think it's pretty robust. And I mean, I go back to Otto Warburg in the 20s. I mean, he was, you know, a young man studying fertilization
Yeah.
of fish eggs, right? And he saw this really robust oxidative process. A lot of oxygen was being consumed by these fish eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it makes sense because the eggs have a lot of mitochondria, and they're going to be using up the oxygen, turning it into water, then releasing the energy. And here's this guy, brilliant scientist and physician, and he puts the spotlight on iron, and it's like putting the spotlight on your stove. I get
Right.
it, you know, and not talking about the chef. But basically what he did was he got the scientific and clinical community to be convinced that the stove knows how to turn itself on, which makes no sense at all. And so that's, to me, that's where the whole start of the disconnect and the deception started back in 1928. That's when it really I could even go back to 25, but let's lock in at 1928. So it's almost 100 years ago. And I think as they learn more about the power and the sophistication of copper metabolism, the more unsettling it becomes. Because my take after 15 years of research now is that copper is the intelligence of the human metabolism. I mean, and I'm not being provocative or
Sure.
facetious. I'm like, no, it really is. The network of enzymes and the network of intercommunication, the signaling that takes place, and what have you. And so I think we're in a pitched battle for the control of humanity.
Uh,
That's where I'd put it right now.
that is really
Right?
the best way to say it.
Yeah. And so it isn't just about power and control. It's about literally taking over the mechanism of life. And I'm a naturalist. I think that Mother Nature figured it out. Our Maker figured it out a long time ago. And what I labor mightily, and I think you do as well, is how do we turn nature back on?
Sure.
That's really what this is about. And I think, to your point and to your question, I think we're right on the cusp of them being able to figure out how to turn nature off.
Right.
And there's a world-renowned scientist. I'm not going to name him by name, but he's figured out how to turn off the ceruloplasmin gene. Well, that's nothing to be excited about.
That can't be good.
And that goes back almost 10 years now. And so, no, that can't be good. And so that is the mechanism. It's one of the key mechanisms for keeping track of what's going on inside the body and what's going on inside the pathways and what's going on inside the signaling. And if you silence that mechanism, it's like scary. And so now what we're facing, and I think I don't know whether I shared this with you last week or not, but I was talking with a naturopath and we were chatting about glyphosate. And
Mm-hmm.
he said, I think we're facing an extinction level event. I said, well, it could very well be. We're getting real close. And that's very unsettling to think about the scale of that. And that's just one farming chemical. There are probably 10 that we don't even know about. And then there's all the things they do to food processing and all the things that are in the drugs.
Right.
And so it's just, I think your question is fair. It's a fair question. And I think in the, you know, each development in and of itself makes perfect sense. But when you begin to create a timeline of events, you're
Right.
like, wow, this has been in a active thought process for decades and for generations now. And so that's where I get nervous is, um, are we waking up too slowly?
Right.
Is it? And at heart, I'm a real firm believer in um, the ability to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
But but there's a point where it's like, have we reached some threshold that we're not even aware of? And
And
I don't know.
is it possible you go over that threshold without people even knowing they've gone over the threshold?
Oh, I think it happens all the time.
Right?
Yeah,
Like they don't even know they're over the threshold. I still,
right.
I kind of have dropped the COVID thing because in my mind it's over, like it's done and over with. But I
Right.
think there's people out there who, if taken before a legal board, don't they are patented at this point. They are owned. Their cell is owned because of
Right. Right.
DNA changes. Does that make
And what
sense?
and what they've done
But
absolutely
they
makes
don't
sense.
know that. No one knows that yet, except for the people that obviously made this stuff.
Yeah, I don't think we have any real understanding of what happened 5 years
No,
ago,
no,
or
not yet fully.
or any awareness of when it started 25 years ago.
Right.
And so it's like this. It's we're so far beyond our. I mean, it's just I think it's so big. Um, it, there better be some angels from on high that can help us. No,
I agree.
we're here to learn lessons. You know, this is a living laboratory, right? And sometimes it's really painful. Sometimes it's a lot of fun. But I don't want to believe that it's. And I hear people talking about timelines and a split in the timelines. I don't know whether that's true or not. That
I don't know.
that, seems, that sounds really. I mean, it's almost euphemistic. I think that, oh yeah, don't worry, that's a negative timeline. You're not going to be there. I'm like, how do you know?
Right.
And but do you ever listen to Cliff High?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I was fascinated by what he was talking about recently with
How'd you stumble on Cliff? Just I'm curious.
just years ago.
Oh,
Someone
did you?
mentioned it,
Okay.
and I don't listen to him regularly,
Sure.
but when he pops up on the feed, I will take the time to listen. And he's brilliant. I mean,
Right.
he has a mind that is way beyond the average chimp, but he understands things that I think the average person doesn't.
Sure.
Does that mean he's right? I don't know, but his um, the connection he was talking about, the temporal event and other events that are potentially coming, it was fascinating, absolutely
Sure.
fascinating to think that, okay, who knows what's going to happen. and and it's not, it's not to take, I'm not trying to be a soothsayer and say, oh, let's get some eyes of newt and bat wings and stuff, but it would be helpful to know what what kind of what level storm are we going into? Is it a cat 1, cat 5? Do we even know? And so it's been fascinating to kind of witness his prognostications over the years. They've been very interesting. So,
I agree.
but
I
I,
agree.
but I wouldn't make bets based on his information. Let's put it that way.
I actually see some of it like starting to play out this year into next year too, which is I don't know why we're on a 4 year pause or whatever it is, but it's very interesting.
Yeah,
But I will tell you, regarding copper,
yeah,
and just health in general, man, we are, and this is, I have hope. I have hope, Morley. We are seeing strong movements in signs of turning over some of the food supply,
yeah, yeah.
the crops. Uh, I know there's thousands of pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, but glyphosate is really being demonized right now, and as it should.
Yeah, no, it's overdue.
Like people are waking up.
My concern, you go back to RBST milk when they
Okay.
first were changing the bovine growth hormone and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and there was an uproar back in the what was that early '90s when that took place. So we're talking about almost 35 years ago, and I mean people just went ballistic. Not my milk, you can't do that.
Right.
And there was a lot of foment for several years about that. And what people didn't realize was that the food trucks were bringing in GMO food
Right.
in the rest of the store. And so now people are waking up to glyphosate. But what is it that they're backing into the store that we don't even know about? No,
Don't
I
be
mean I
don't
don't
be
mean to
don't
be
be sinister like that.
no, but it's just again they've got layers and layers of
Sure.
activity. And again, there when does the stress end on the planet? When you go 6 feet under, right? And so it's
We don't even know if that ends the stress.
right. I know. I've had that thought many times.
I mean, who's
It'll be a different kind of stress, I suppose.
could be a new
But the thing
stress.
is, this is a stress test of your spirit. What can you sustain, and what are you able to do in the face of
Right.
that stress? So um, pretty
Unreal.
pretty heavy
Um,
stuff. Two guys trying to understand copper.
are you finding that you're getting more people understanding and waking up to this in your own sphere? Like the copper?
Yes, I mean
Okay.
I'm regularly being contacted by people wanting to take the course. The institute it
Yeah.
opens up. Well, actually, I think open enrollment just started this week. Just started today, actually. But people wanting to take the course, people thanking me for doing this research, people saying I saved their life, people telling me about. I was just talking to a guy in Saudi Arabia yesterday, and he said, "You didn't just save my life." He said, "I've passed your knowledge on to 3 other women who are being given iron infusions for their anemia."
Right.
And he said, they perked up like plants when they got copper in their body, and they don't need the iron anymore. And so it's just, I don't know. I think that there is a growing awareness, and so we're going to have our webinar. We have a couple webinars a month, but the one, I guess it'll be in about 2.5, 3 weeks.
How can people find
It's
that?
going to
How can they find that?
go to rcp123.org and just look under the resources page, and they'll have a listing of the
Oh, okay. I
special
see that.
events, and the webinar. And there'll be, I think it's like the second week in November. It's going to be on anemia, and so that'll be. On more than one occasion, I have talked about that around my birthday, because that's my gift to the world is wake up. It's not a lack of iron. You just don't understand how copper regulates iron. So that'll be my. I think it's like the 13th or 14th of November.
The 12th.
12th. Thank you. Okay.
12th
Yeah.
at 3 o'clock. I'm assuming Eastern time. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's exciting.
Yeah. No, it's just over the years we've learned so many nuances to this anemia, and it's really funny. I came across, I never know where I'm going to go in the morning, right? Every morning's like okay, where am I going? And suddenly I found myself faced with a 450-page book on nutritional anemia. It's pretty intense. And by the grace of God, chapter 8 was written by three scientists from Chile. They have a lot of copper in Chile. Did you know that?
Do they?
Yeah, a lot of copper mines. And so those copper mines fund copper research in the
Ah,
university. And Olivares, Dr. Olivares is a big name in the world of copper research. He and two of his colleagues wrote this wonderful article on the relationship of copper and zinc to anemia, and they cracked the code. And they had this diagram that
Venn
outlined the
diagram.
six, yeah, outlined the six copper enzymes that if they go south, you're going to get anemia. And it's like it's not from lack of iron. So I say that again. It's not lack of iron. It's that the iron's not being moved properly by the copper. And it was just, I was like, I pinched myself. I said, did this really happen? And it was this little innocuous article in the midst of this tome on nutritional anemia and how you need to be careful about how much iron you have, blah, blah. But some editor thought, okay, I'm going to put some truth in here and let's bury it in chapter 8. And I run up against stuff like that all the time. So they want to make it more fun. They want to make it,
Of course. Of
how
course.
how good is your peripheral vision? You know, so
Um, I still get anemia all the time. Not I get it.
yeah,
I
no, I
hear
get it.
it.
Oh, I'm sure you hear it all the time.
Do you still hear it every day?
Yeah. Oh, every day, up to 2 or 3 times a day.
So you can't be that upset about it. Do you get vitamin D still every day?
No, I don't get as much vitamin D. I think
No?
people.
Okay.
I think the part of humanity that's going to wake up around that has woken up. I think they and I think what we're seeing now is there's kind of a backing away from drown yourself in vitamin D. I think people
Right.
are beginning to realize that's not the answer. But every day someone reaches out to me. Several people reach out to me about anemia, like clockwork.
Like clockwork.
No, I mean, we went to see our chiropractor this morning. We have this little ritual. We go see him, and then we go have a breakfast. And this practitioner over in the UK said, "I got to talk to you." So I'm eating breakfast with one hand and holding the phone with the other, trying to talk to her about this. It's a little boy, 12 years old, and he's being manhandled by the system because they don't understand the difference between iron deficiency and iron dysregulation. And as soon as you change the word from deficiency to dysregulation, well, then you can introduce another variable, which is called
Right.
copper, which is what's missing, and that's why it's not right. The numbers aren't right.
Do you get more adults or more kids today?
Oh, by far adults.
Okay, adult. And more, I'm assuming more females than males. Correct?
Yes. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay.
But
So it hasn't
the
changed
mind,
much.
no, it hasn't changed much. But the mindset is so steeped around, oh, the woman has a menstrual cycle, she's losing blood, so therefore she must be iron deficient. And then, and that makes sense conceptually,
Okay.
but then you have to introduce the work of Jerry. Oh my God, can't think of his last name. Jerry Sullivan.
I was almost going to say, I knew it would start with an S. I heard it so many times. I'm like, it's server,
Yeah,
self.
no, Jerry Sullivan, Jerome L. Sullivan, Jerome Lewis Sullivan. Now that my brain's coming back online, and but he was a world-renowned pathologist at University of Florida in Gainesville, at the Met Center. And he's the guy in 1981. He figured out the reason why women live longer than men is because they have a menstrual cycle. So it's just this really jaw dropping. Wait a minute. I mean,
Sure.
donating iron for 40 years is actually a good thing, and he figured out why. Because there's a lower concentration of iron in the tissue of women, so they have fewer problems. Just, I mean, and there's a great article where his wife is describing how excited he was when he made this discovery.
He
He
must have
called,
been super excited.
oh my God, he called her up. He's like, he just won the mega lottery because he was able to prove in the research, prove through his pathology intervention why it happened. It was, and then of course he goes on to publish it in Lancet, and it would be like Yogi Berra hitting his, what, first two
Sure.
hits were home runs, right? But
Sure.
that was Jerry Sullivan at Lancet. Home run, home run. Amazing.
Interesting. Interesting. Um, Sidebar question. Are you coming to Weston A. Price down here?
No, no. We decided not to do it. I mean, a lot of variables got in the way, but the book got in the way. It's like
The book.
I was,
Okay.
as
When
much
is the
as I
book
wanted
coming
to
out?
do that, I'm going to find out next Monday. I'll let you know.
Is
When
it
we when
like
we have
so?
our call, I can tell people when it's going to come out.
Okay.
But no, the as much as I love the Weston A. Price meeting, I think it's just a phenomenal
I was
event.
just curious because I mean I know we talked about it many times, so I was curious, not but the topic
Yeah.
of Weston A. Price.
And Dr. Clavet is actually going to be talking there, but remotely. If he was going to be there physically, I would make tracks for your your hometown, but I'm not going to.
But
If it's
the
remote,
book is
the book is the priority,
imminent.
imminent, yes. So and it's exciting. So I sent you some other text. I want to see if you can find the text that has the copper going down and another copper going up. Can you find it? It's a blue and red
Oh,
lines.
I can find it. I have them all ready for the most part.
I think this is the most amazing one I've come across. The other ones I sent you are kind of geeksville, but this one's really cool. Did you find it?
Is this the
You're
one?
amazing. Yeah, you're amazing. Okay.
There you go. Explain away.
So, all right. So you don't want to take a first pass?
Well, I
Um,
mean, I could figure it out over time. I mean, I'd have to study it.
so we've got this thing in our body called the TGN, Trans Golgi Network. And what is that? It's the Chinese laundry inside our cell. It's, what do? They fold laundry, right? In a Chinese laundry, you fold the sheets and fold the clothing. Well, the trans Golgi network is folding the proteins, but it can only do that if there's copper around. The the folds, the sulfur atoms, cysteine amino acids, things like that. They've got to bend, and you got to have copper around and able to support that. And then we have something in our cells called the lysosome,
Okay.
and that's the stomach of the cell. And our body is designed to rebuild itself constantly. It's recycling itself all the time. It's breaking things down. And people have heard of autophagy.
Yes.
They've heard of mitophagy. There's a whole bunch of ophagies. Well, that process is taking place in the lysosome. And that process requires what are called high energy peroxides.
Okay.
Those are chemicals that are able to break things apart so that they can be reused. Well, it turns out that both the TGN and the lysosome is where copper likes to hang out. Turns out copper likes to hang out in the mitochondria. Turns out copper's inside the nucleus. Copper's inside the cell all over the place, but it's not in the headlines on the internet because they want us to believe we're toxic and we got to get rid of it. But what this figure is pointing out is that as the copper concentration rises inside the cell, it moves from one organelle to the other.
Mm.
And so that there is this idea that we're toxic. That's not true. There's intelligence, and the body, the organs, the tissue, the cells are aware of what's going on, and the tissue knows when it needs to move the copper from the Chinese laundry into the recycling program so it can rebuild itself. Does that make sense?
So it is. I'm going to ask a follow-up question.
Are you feeling like Brett Barr? Is that what you're feeling like?
Well, I've been having this pondering thought in my head for some time,
Okay.
which is the human body is very adaptable, correct? We already know this. I mean,
Of course.
just walk outside. Look at look at the person who is, and I'm not even joking. I mean, I was at an event yesterday. Most everyone seemed pretty healthy, but you see someone walking around and they're 100 plus pounds overweight, right?
Right.
I mean, or let me give you a better one. Yeah, you're in public and you see somebody walking around, they're overweight, but you look down, they're wearing shorts and their legs are gigantic. They look like they're going to explode.
Right.
And you see black and blue on the legs and essentially diabetic, and but they're still moving, Morley. Like they're
Peripheral neuropathy, all sorts of
right,
edema.
purple neuropathy, like necrosis, literally. But yet
Yep.
they're still walking around. They're still eating the bad food. They're still, and I always look at that, and I always like kind of nudge my wife, and I'm like, well, first of all, look at it because we obviously we're analyzing people as doctors and healthcare providers.
Right.
But then I'm always fascinated that body is still moving. Does that make sense?
Absolutely agree.
It's
Totally.
like they're still going and they still have potentially years in their life. So I set it up with that. Now, there are a multitude of toxicities out there, right?
Yeah.
Parasites, molds, metals, vaccine stuff, adjuvants, glyphosate, you name it, right? I mean, there's in a numerous quantity that I could bring up, right? However, this is my philosophizing on this. We can detox all day long. However, what if we just add back into the body the stuff that was supposed to be there in the beginning, whether that's a
Right.
B vitamin or a copper or a magnesium? Morley, if we put in what the body was supposed to have, would the body naturally get rid of the toxicities and the things that are not supposed to be there, for lack of better just wording?
Well, that's the whole basis of the root cause protocol, is bring back the nutrients that have been missing for
Right. And allow it to
decades.
actually detox itself.
Right. And is it flawless? Is it perfect? No. The biggest variable that gets in the way, to be honest, is the individual's belief in their body's natural ability to heal itself.
That's correct.
And if they don't have an unswerving conviction that I can do this, I just need the right nutrients,
Right.
they're gonna get into all sorts of gyrations of resistance. They're gonna have doubt. As soon as they have doubt, that's going to send up an energetic signal, and it really gets in the way of the healing process.
Sure.
But no, my read of the tea leaves, based on thousands of articles, is that the body does have this inherent ability to turn itself back on and knows what to do. The intelligence, there's a blueprint for intelligence. It just needs energy. That's really what it needs. It needs the right nutrients, but the nutrients are going to lead to energy, which is going to fire up the process. I would say that there is a camp led by a famous scientist named Joseph Prohaska. He was a copper expert in his day. He's retired, still with us, but he was up at the University of Minnesota in Ely, Minnesota, and he was incredibly robust in his research. And he took the position that if the fetus didn't get what it needed from its mother, there was no way you could ever make up for it as an adult.
Oh,
And
really?
it stirred a lot of debate around that, you can imagine. And I don't know whether he's right or not. I want to believe that even with all of the
Well, it was a theory, though. He didn't have like he didn't.
no, that's right. No, that's right. That's exactly right. But even with all the chaos that we've got out there that you described, I still want to believe that the body has this natural mechanism and pathway. And again, it isn't take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning and
Sure.
it's all. There is a process. There is a time. You've got to get rid of the emotional trauma. You've got to get rid of the histamine reactions. You've got to get rid of the excess iron through blood donations.
Yeah.
That's what's described in the protocol. But when you begin to work those avenues and you start to introduce the right nutrients, I think the body does come back online.
Well, I mean,
there are too many people around the world who've benefited from this protocol, to be honest.
sure. I mean, and I mean, anytime we put a good nutrient, mineral, whatever else it may be in, I mean, that's proven by that. Now, here's a follow-up question on that. Not anywhere associated with what I asked before, but you made me think of something. You have all these copper experts, right, that you know of and talk with and et cetera, right?
Yeah.
They're at prestigious universities. You just said the last one was at University of Minnesota, correct?
Yep.
It's great. It's a great school, from my understanding.
Yeah, the
Morley,
right.
if these people have been working on this for decades or longer, why is none of this in a textbook that I've ever read? Why is this not being presented to nutrition boards? Why is this not? Do you know? I'm not trying to be a jerk, because obviously I'm trying to. I like, these are smart people. If they're working at these universities, why is this not? Why is none of this at all essentially mainstream?
All of this is in textbooks. It's
Which
just not
ones?
textbook. Oh no, there's hundreds of textbooks that have this, like that book on nutritional anemia, and there was this article that was just like.
But it's not being used in mainstream like teaching classes.
That's a different question.
That's my question then.
Okay, so the documents, the record does exist.
Okay.
It's housed in places the average person would never go there, and unfortunately, it's not taught in the classroom.
Does that not bother these researchers that it's not being, like, is it their goal to just be in a textbook? Because my goal would be, okay, textbook, great, but is it being taught?
I'm sure I haven't talked to the totality of scientists, but
These
I'm
are
sure
questions that are just popping up in my mind.
no, but I think there's a faction of scientists that would be very frustrated.
I would be.
But I think they also realize that they've got to go along to get along, and they probably, their goal is to have staying power, like a Leslie Clavet, who's now 90 years old, and he has a body of studies that is irrefutable. I mean, he's the guy in 1973, figured out that, it's copper deficiency that's causing cholesterol to rise.
Right.
He's the guy. And then for that research study to become science, one other lab had to replicate it. Well, 30 labs have replicated it. So it isn't a debatable point. Of course he's right. It's just not popular. And what's the mainstream education built on? Statins.
It's not popular. Oh my God, you know how bad that is.
It's like on Facebook. Oh, how many likes did you get? And that's really what runs research. I mean,
I know that's a punch in the gut, isn't it?
Well, of course it is. William Wiglicki. He's a Harvard trained cardiologist, and back in the 80s, he figured out what was causing heart disease. It was inflammation. And he figured out that it was a lack of magnesium that was triggering substance P to go sky high, and that was initiating this pathway of inflammation that was causing heart disease. Wait, guess what happened? He gets kicked out of Harvard. he
the
ends
same
up
school that published the article that sugar was okay for you and fats are bad for you.
Of course, right. So and so he ends up at George Washington University, which is still a really good
Still a
school.
great school. I mean,
it's not
great
Harvard,
in the academic aspect of.
but it's not Harvard. And then one of his colleagues, Peter Libby, So Weglicki's article got 50 likes. It was just like nothing. And so his colleague, Dr. Libby, Peter Libby, publishes an article like 10 years later on inflammation. Don't you know? Tying to heart disease. Don't you know? But he doesn't talk about minerals. He just said inflammation comes from Mars. Guess how many likes he had on his article?
How many?
5,000. And so we're in social media. And so people very quickly, oh, it's safe to like that. I like that because that's not going to get me into trouble. But if you like Wiglicki, I mean, he's a truther. He's a total truther. Last time I talked with him was several years ago, and he didn't even say hello. He said, "Morley, do you have any money you can send me?" And he was in his mid 80s by then. He was, I'm sure, just gasping for funding. But it's like that's the dark side of research is that there's some really amazing minds out there, and the funding dries up, and then they lose their voice. So it's you know
So oh, that's frustrating to me.
I'm not making light of it, but you have
No,
to.
I know, I know, no, I would laugh
Yeah,
too. It's more of just like, oh God, we have so much work. Is it? Can this be done? Can this
of course,
change?
of course it can be done. Is it going to be in our lifetime? I don't know. I mean, what's the famous saying by Max Planck? Science advances one death at a time. As each scientist has been resisting the truth dies, then a younger scientist can bring something forward. And you're like, no, it can't be that bad, but it is that bad.
Right,
And so there are power players in the world of research, as you would find anywhere. There's always a power player somewhere,
right,
and they have Ansel Keys. He was a power player. Guess
right.
where he guess where he hung out at the University of Minnesota, and
Really?
and oh yeah, and he he turned the world on its ear around cholesterol, and it's like it made his argument made no sense from the get go. And guess how long it took to overcome his force field? It took 65 years. 65. He lived to be 100 years old. Did you know that?
Did he really?
Yeah, yeah. He was a force to reckon with. But again, it took 65 years before Raznikov and Diamond in 2016 published an article and said, enough. We're not going to tolerate this anymore. And that article shifted. No, it shifted the mindset around cholesterol. It's not a problem. Stop saying that. And it's absolutely amazing that humanity was held hostage for 2 generations, 65 years. So,
Unreal.
and
Un.
then, what's been amazing for me is not just to learn the science, but to learn the story behind the science. I
Right.
really get fascinated by that. I think my work for 18 years as a genealogist, tracing my roots, I wanted to know the story behind the story, and that's really has helped me a lot to
Right.
understand um, why did this research happen. What was the personality of the scientist that led to the breakthrough,
Right.
or what was the mindset of science at that time. I mean, I came across an article probably 3 months ago on this is from 1924, so it's a century ago, literally a century ago, and what they knew about iron dysregulation and neurodegeneration in Germany. It was like, wow, and then they knew their stuff, and it's like we went sideways for a century. They were all over it. Jason, it was unbelievable. So the information's out there. Um, you got to dig for it. The last place you're going to find it is on the internet. Unfortunately, I mean,
Unless you know where to study, unless you know where to find PDFs and papers.
exactly. It's not going to be in the chat rooms. It's going to be in um, the Google search engines, in the Google Scholar. I've never gotten good results with Brave. With what is it Brave? No, not Brave.
You
What's
talking
the
about
one
like
that begins with B?
DuckDuckGo like stuff?
Go, but there's another one beginning with a B. Isn't it Brave?
Well, Brave browser, but it's still connected to Chrome. It's still connected to Google.
I've never gotten good results with it.
I
I've never
I
gotten.
mean, honestly, at the end of the day, it's still Google's got what they've got, and you have to know where to go to find stuff if you want to, or where to go to get studies. But I'll be honest with you, I this could be interesting. The news that I'm hearing, well, if you didn't know, all search engines now are already AI. It's not like,
Oh
oh,
yeah,
AI, they're already AI, right? Like
right.
even Google, when you search Google, it's AI. Like people don't
Yeah,
realize that.
that's right.
But what's coming is where you just ask AI, either voice or text, what you're looking
Right.
for. And one of the things that's getting ready to happen is, like, for example, totally different subject, but how this could apply to what you're talking about is you're going to be able to say, hey, I need to fly to such and such city, this date, this time. I need to pay around this much money. And it's going to find it for you and book it for you without even having to actually you look for it
Wow.
via AI. And the reason I say that is because obviously that's a completely different example. However, think of the things that apply to our industry in healthcare or research or whatever it is. How will AI work with that? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, but I worry about what I have found that Olivar's article in chapter
Mm-hmm.
8 of nutritional anemia by asking AI, hey, find a really robust proof that copper's the problem. And I mean, I
Right.
don't know how I would ask the question in a way that it would guide the search engine to find it. I mean, it was just I look back on finding that article. That was divine intervention
Sure.
because I don't know how I found the nutritional anemia book to begin with, and then I'm like, oh my God, what is this 450 pages? And I'm going through the index, and I'm like, wait a minute, chapter on copper. Let me take a look at that, and then boom, and then it's like before Olivares, after Olivares, and I knew what he was talking about, but he had wonderful citations to prove that other people have been thinking about this for a while, dude. And here's a gift on a platter for you. It was
Totally.
amazing.
Unbelievable, sir. Well, I'm running to another show as always now.
Appreciate the chance to have the chat.
Always fantastic information. Morley will have
Yep,
the next information for me via text on next Monday before we go live, as he always does.
exactly.
He texts me what we're going to talk about, and we'll do some questions next week. How does that sound?
That'd be great. I look forward to it. Yeah,
Everybody,
super.
it's Mondays with Morley. Morley Robbins, thanks for being with us, sir, as always. And you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody. Happy Monday.
Bye bye.
Health, freedom, knowledge.